So what is the fun stuff that you can do with a frequency shifter? That, of course, is the question. Well, one of the things that you can do is you can do this very strong, typical kind of barber pole effect. And as you hear, we have a very strong resonant effect. So if instead of an oscillator signal we take like a very slow pulse signal, then you will get nice little pings. And one of the things that you can do, you can actually also modulate the pitch. So one of the things that you can try to do is you can take an oscillator signal, like a sine wave, put that into the rate mod, and but again, because we now have a very low frequency here and we have a high frequency here, the frequency modulation doesn't really do that much. So let's use that sample and hold trick of the envelope generator and see if we can make this a bit more interesting. For that, I just put the sawtooth output into the matrix and we get the output from the matrix. And now I take the sawtooth signal to gate the envelope generator, and instead of going directly into the rate mod here, I feed the oscillator into the sample and hold. Now you get a more interesting kind of pattern. Of course, instead of a sample and hold, you can also use the wrangler, in which case we clock the wrangler also with the sawtooth and use the stepped output. And if we change the feedback to the upper sideband, we get much more higher harmonics. It's also fun to, instead of now having a pulse, take another oscillator input, another oscillator signal as an input, and see what all this modulation does. Another kind of modulation that works really nice is basically based on the idea that if you have an LFO that goes into a really slow range and then sometimes goes and also can go into a higher range, if you keep it slow, then sometimes you just open the knob and that is sort of like you just push the LFO a bit further into another kind of sound, which I did before the break with the other thing. And you can sort of do that with the third LFO from the 3 LFO, the LFO C, because if you modulate the pitch of the frequency shifter internal oscillator with a pulse, you can sort of make it go slow, fast, slow, fast. And then you would get an effect like this. Without modulation, it's like this, and I actually feed it a very short pulse. So if the pulse is down, it slows down, but then at a certain moment, this little pulse Alternatively, for this short pulse, you could also take the second envelope from an envelope generator and set it to a really fast attack and decay time. So you get a sort of a short pulse, and then use this polarity output that really goes negative. So it also slows down and speeds up that frequency shifter thing. There is one connector here, which is called regen insert. Basically, adding the resonance, I have called regeneration, and that is because officially the word, of course, is resonance, but there have been many different words used for that. Sometimes they talk about the Q of a filter. Sometimes they talk about, sometimes I call it peaking in the twin peak filter, because that just sounds nice with the peaking. There is not really an official name. Some call it resonance. And sometimes synthesizers have regeneration on the filter, which I think actually Bob Moog used on some synthesizers. I don't, so, but it is also a common name, and I'm in the habit of sometimes just using one of these words or another, just how I feel like, and then I just assume that everybody knows what I mean.
Was it called contour? What's that?
Or contour?
Yeah.
No, that is the envelope. The envelope contour.
Right.
Contouring the filter, the contour switch, yeah. So there's always a bit of confusion about these words, but basically regeneration, which you sometimes also find on echoes and delays, they call it regeneration sometimes.